Welcome, 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 everyone, to another adventure into reality. Today, I am joined by a special guest. His name is Seth Leaf Pruzansky. Seth is his own motivational self-help person, self-developed his own skills, and has one hell of a story to talk about. I recently heard him on the Lawyer Eisenhower show, and when the show was done, I said I wanted to have this person come on and talk to my guests because this guy knows what's going down. Seth, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I really appreciate that.
Me too. And you know what? As I was listening on Laura's show and you were going through some of the things with your story and how you perceive the world and how you come from the heart, I'm going to say to my audience, I talk very similar and he talks very similar. And when you have two people that use similar language to get to the same concept, it's not just philosophy anymore. It's practical application. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on is these practical applicable tools. Now, everybody, there's no one cookie cutter way to heal anyone or to get you on the enlightening path. You just have to realize you got to make your own cookies. Okay. And your cookies don't need to be circle, square. They need to be your own polyhedron cookies. And right now we're going to talk some generalities, but specific generalities that will help different people in different stages. So Seth, why don't you give people just an introduction of what it is that you went through, how it is you began this journey of greater perception.
Oh, well, it's interesting you talk about how a lot of people have a philosophical understanding of all this stuff. For me, none of that stuff actually emerged until the practical became really deeply ingrained into me. And a lot of that was because I didn't have the vocabulary, I didn't have the tools or an idea of how to encapsulate these internal experiences into words. And so it was this trial by error, you could say, or by going through these things that I didn't want to go through, that most people don't want to go through, and really being put to the test of like, okay, I can't take anymore. I am literally at the edge of my human self, my human emotions, my human perception. Everything is pushed as far out to the edge as it can be. And I hate it. I'm a victim. I don't want to take any more of this. God help me, please. But nobody came to help me. And I realized like, okay, like it started getting absurd, the amount of issues and feelings and problems and how overwhelming the world around me. It got to a point where it was so absurd that it was almost comical. It was like kind of laughing. I was laughing about it a little way in a bit. And I realized, you know what? If I just intentionally calm myself down, if I just breathe deeply, then what would happen? And I noticed that no matter what I was going through, if I intentionally just brought myself into a heart-brain coherent space, if I was breathing gently, deep rhythmic breaths, and feeling what that feels like, the effect that that had on my body, it felt a lot better than being stressed out or feeling like a victim or all the other things that were keeping me from being in that state. So really, it was like a return to common sense for me, because I remembered these feelings. It was like being a kid, you know?
That return to common sense, a lot of people go through it and don't realize it is a huge part of the awakening. When common sense unfolds itself once again and helps you realize some of the gullibilities and mistakes that we've made in the past and the current habit patterns that makes it easy for us to fall victim to our own inequities within ourselves. I just want to let everyone know Seth and I are going to be talking about all the different self-help motivation stuff as well as the philosophy behind it so people don't understand. And then we're going to open up to questions to the audience. I see a lot of people have already raised their hand. So if you're listening on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or any other place, Robert's going to put up some information of how to come into the Zoom room. We will be taking direct questions from the chat room before we have anybody call in. So if you put your questions in capital letters, not yelling, as according to my post, okay? You will not be yelling if you put your questions into capital letters. We ask that you be thoughtful of your questions about self-help motivation, the awakening, and not specific questions about blue beings coming to you and wiping your butt, okay, when you were 4. Okay, we're going to save that for another show. We'll really generalize the self-help motivation questions. So right now, Robert has all the information up there on the screen, so you are at any other place. I like to have fun with my audience because sometimes they get very specific, and a few of them are laughing. Anyway, Seth, let's delve deep into the whole philosophy that you've learned from your body.
So I realized that a lot of my human personality had developed unknowingly out of alignment with the natural rhythms of my body. And as a result of my personality forming in that way, I began to embody ideas, beliefs, and even the way I interpreted and processed information from the environment around me in a very disconnected or incoherent state. Essentially, I was perceiving things according to the stress hormones that were being pumped out in my body as a result of not feeling connected to source. And when I finally got to a point in my life, it was like, you could say the spiritual rock bottom, right? It's like when you just keep getting brought to all these different rock bottoms and all these different parts of your life, but you still don't get it until you finally get it. It's like when everything falls apart, everything breaks down, and you've been trying to ignore it and deny all these little signs that were coming at you the whole time. It was then that I really was able to like wake up and realize how out of alignment I had become, and that I essentially did that to myself because I didn't know any better. So again, to touch on that theme of common sense, it was really just like, okay, if I did this, because I very easily realized like I can be at a state of peace, I can be in a state of calm and feel incredible, feel unlimited, feel expansive, or I can do the opposite of that and feel stressed out and I'm in a very contracted or constricted kind of like withering state. So
taking on the victim consciousness.
all that, right? And you take on this whole personal thing. You have all these belief systems that aren't even yours to begin with that you incorporate into your own belief systems because they resonate at a frequency similar to how you've been thinking and feeling. So it's like we don't even know why we believe the things that we do, but we believe them and we keep revisiting them, giving them more life, So it was like, okay, I have to train myself to be in this expansive state and keep revisiting it no matter what happens, no matter who triggers me, no matter what events happen in my life that would try to convince me to do otherwise. And in the beginning, you can imagine it's hard to do that, because you're going against all of your own conditioning. You're going against everything that you think is who you are. But I realized that the feeling of release that came from me constantly revisiting this idea that I'm not who I think I am. I'm whatever this energy is that's actually animating my being, that's causing my heart to beat, that is just letting me be alive. It's gifting me the opportunity to exist. That felt so right. And it felt like something that I had so undervalued throughout most of my life that it was a common sense thing. I just kept saying, all right, if I don't feel like I'm valuing this energy that is gifting me the opportunity to live, then I'm stuck in the past. I'm stuck in my ego. I'm stuck in all these things that I don't like. So I just kept doing it until suddenly something happened and it just changed.
So how is that not escapism, what you just described, and the philosophy of the greater awareness you learned from it?
It so depends on somebody's definition of escapism, but I would say it's absolutely escapism. But it's escapism in the sense that I had unknowingly constructed a prison that I was incarcerated in. And so I wanted to escape from it. Now, if I stayed in my prison cell, then I can be the biggest victim on the planet. I can hate life. I can blame everybody and everything. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to escape from this, but not in a bypassing way. Okay, I'm going to do.
You outcreated it.
Exactly.
In that outcreation process, you realized I'm in a prison. I get 20 minutes out in the yard every day. In that 20 minutes, I'm going to create so much intense energy that there is no more prison anymore.
That's exactly it. So having the ability to think and feel greater than the way you're most normally used to thinking and feeling, right? Choosing to take a quantum leap, even though you don't know what it is, you kind of know that you have that capability. Hence the imagination, all the things we had as a kid when we can imagine these beautiful fantasies and give life to them. We stop doing that as we begin to mature. We stop engaging in our creative faculties, and that is the death of our potential.
Yes, it's the death now when we don't know how to outcreate, a bag of grapes. Okay. And when we were all kids, we had a toy that allowed us to outcreate the reality around us. For me, it was Legos. And for everyone else, if you just think back, what was your toy that allowed you the honorable escapism of your own creativity? And you'll just understand what Seth and I are talking about. And now that you have this modern belief system of I'm an adult and I'm super serious, and you're trying to take the serious stick out of your ass all the time, and it just doesn't work, it's because there's something in you that's not allowing the childish aspect of that energy through.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, like I know that from examining my own resistance to the things that come up in life, a lot of it has to do with traumas that happened to me in this life, as a young person that were so impactful to me that I just kept revisiting them, giving them more of a place to exist in my body and in my field, you could say. So I was doing that, even though it happened to me. Instead of me being able to perceive it as something like, okay, this happened, now I'm going to move through it, which would have actually allowed me more growth. It would have given me the ability to break down perceptual barriers. I did the opposite because I didn't know any better. I just kept reinforcing the prison I was in, putting more putty and bricks and cement up to reinforce it,
Yeah. And every now and then a little beam of sunlight, it hits you. Oop, gotta cover that up.
No hope.
No hope.
With a little dust or something that breaks, hits you in the head, and I'm a victim again. Yeah, exactly. Cover it up.
Exactly. Cover it right up. And that is a great example for people to see how it's easy to get trapped in your own squalor. And I use the word squalor for a reason. It's what lowers your frequency and energy each and every day. It's the habitual habit patterns that bite you in the ass over and over again. Whether they're karmas, ancestral karmas, it doesn't matter. They're still affecting you in the now. And part of what at least Seth's website is, you're awake, now what? And you all hear me go, now what? All the time. So when you have the proverbial little beam of sunlight hit you in your own prison, now what? It's a choice. It's a choice to allow that energy in and go, all right, I'm a little stuck. Oh God, there's junk all around me and I just stubbed my toe and it hurts really bad. Maybe I'll clean up what's around me just a little bit so I have a little room to breathe and go, I can start breaking this down and get myself out of this by building a stairway out of your despair.
I love how we have so many similarities of quote unquote philosophy. A lot of people feel like, I've heard people make up all these excuses like, oh, I can't do what you did, or I don't have it in me to do that because of all these things that happened to me in a past life or something. And it's like, my God, no, it's this life.
It's this life and your choices now. Even if it was a past life, it's this life now and your choice now.
It's that return to common sense,
Exactly, that return to common sense. And see, I have a whole other set of words. I call myself the grandmaster of the obvious, seen and unseen.
I love it.
Common sense, grandmaster of the obvious. They'll go hand in hand. And I had to put myself into my self-attained grandmaster of the obvious training, which was multiple degrees of separation beyond what's just in this general conversation. And that's how I learned to read people's creativity or uncreativity. The streams of their non-creativity told me a lot about them.
You know what else you do too that I find really refreshing is your lighthearted attitude. There's like this sweet spot where in between being super serious and not being serious, that we can find a way to expedite our growth. And you just embody that. I love it.
It was a choice a long time ago, but also I was a limo driver for 10 years. So it's a practice energy also.
Oh Oh man.
Practice energy. But I enjoy doing this stuff. I enjoy talking to people. Every now and then I get a little overwhelmed when it's depressy after depressy after depressy. And it's the same thing, self-help motivation. Got to do it with yourself, And some of that repetition can get challenging. And then I get somebody who is a depressy and gets it and changes their life and calls back a few months later and they've got a boyfriend, they've got everything going together for them and they want to know what to do next. It doesn't matter. 10 more depressies, I can handle it.
Well, you've got me to use as a case study in the sense that my life was as screwed up as somebody's life could be. I mean, it was just done over, destroyed. From my perspective, there wasn't any way that I was going to come out of it. Severe drug addiction, being incarcerated in an actual prison, just dealing with things that had brought me to such a new low. Right? We think that all these lows exist, and then we find out there's new lows. And I did not see any proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. I had to literally make a choice of, am I going to let this take me down? Am I going to let this be where it all ends? Or am I not? And when I made that choice that I'm not going to not let this take me down, I couldn't see where I would even begin to come out of that, because it was like all I had was what took me down. So it's like you said before, there was just this innate knowingness, even though I wasn't consciously aware of it, that was like, you know what? I need to take a quantum leap in the way I'm perceiving this. I don't know how, but I know I've got to do it. And my God, I'm just going to do it. And it was like that kind of commitment, that kind of choice, that kind of like decision-making with amplitude and intensity behind it that enabled me to do that. And if I can do it, everybody can.
And I say this too, anything I can do, you can do better and even better beyond it. I only put courage, commitment, and discipline and practice behind it, none of them which are mystical. Okay? So, balls in your court. You all want to go and do this. It does take a lot of self-motivation and the capacity to say, what am I out creating today? And sometimes it's not about the inner work. It's not about the shadow work. It's out creating your last creation without competing against all the other creations you have. And I run into this a lot of people who are writers or professional artists. The last creation has a hierarchical creativity thing behind it. You're out creating the energy, but not the creation itself and how it does impacts people.
Oh man, I love that. Again, by getting back into the natural rhythms of our body, by enacting this childhood ability to envision and imagine, we activate something within us as adults that opens up the gateways, the dormant energy centers of mind and body that can then start having the energy of creativity flowing through them again. And that's what it is.
So this opens the door. Your story has lots of drama, trauma, dharma, karma. I want you to get a little interest. And for all the people who say out there, I can't do this, I don't have time for this, no. And I know there's a lot of you listening right now who have questions about yourself and the challenges you're going through. Listen to this man's story and then go, I can try a little bit more.
That's so beautiful and powerful. And yes, I've got stories within stories, right? Like my issues have issues, but we all have that, right?
You have what I call magazine racks of issues that date back many years of issues.
Because it's true in many ways. A lot of the initial stuff that kind of sets us on a downward spiral or, off spiral to whatever we're connected to, it comes from something that happened and we keep reinforcing it. So it's like the same thing, but with a different appearance in another part of our life, and we keep reinvesting energy back into being a mess, So I'll summarize a story for kind of the last big initiation or problem that happened to me, because it's very much in alignment with what we're experiencing right now as a species as a result of COVID and the pandemic. But essentially, before all this stuff happened, I got arrested. I was set up by one of my closest friends who I'd known for 15 years, set up for selling weed, which I was selling at the time. Got literally put into jail. I got a 5-year sentence. The government took everything I owned, just crushed my entire life. You know, I was really, really sick when I went in there. I had all these health problems, GI issues, just, I mean, an all new low. And I was put into this place in my adult years where I was like, oh my God, I've lost everything. I've brought myself to a place where I felt every single problem that I had tried to avoid or bypass stemming back from my childhood, you know? And again, it was like, it was in that situation when I was actually in a physical prison that I realized I had long been in a mental and emotional prison way before that. So when I finally made that decision, like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. Then just began this process of self-inquiry. You know, I would ask myself, what would I have to do and be like? What would my state of being have to be so that I can begin to feel some freedom, so that I can begin to feel good about my life, despite the way it looks around me? And so this process of coming back and inquiring within, like, what is it that is holding me back from being able to feel good, being able to experience goodness in there? Like, what is it? What is preventing it? And it's like, it's me. That's it. I was the only one in the way of preventing myself from feeling good. But it was like, all right, so what does that mean? Well, I have to forgive my friend who put me in jail for 15 years. I have to forgive the government for crushing my life and taking everything from me. But I don't have to forgive them for them. I had to forgive them so that I wasn't carrying around the weight of all these past traumas that, believe me, I could just keep revisiting them and keep giving them life, and it would have kept me stuck in this place. You know, so it was this process of like dumping off my baggage, just getting rid of old things that I don't need anymore and feeling myself get a little bit lighter. And through that process of doing that, I began to become aware of things that I wasn't really aware of in the state that I was in before. And these are just like, it's like those magazine racks of, you know, old magazines. It's that chain of neural networks that are connected to the initial trauma, right? And so the more I continued revisiting this stuff, dumping off the things that I didn't need, the more aware I became of things that I had been unaware of, that in this new state of being lighter, feeling lighter from the inside out, I was able to shine that light on those deep, darker things that I didn't even know were there. And that began to free up more space. That began to make me realize, like, wow, I can start to embody virtues of loving my body, loving this place that I'm in. Okay. And in jail, I was like, wow, to really test if this is working, this means that I'm going to have to love the physical environment that I was in, the actual place, not hate it, not resist it, not feel like this place is just getting the best of me. I had to be like, wow, can I embrace this? And so I tried. And, you know, I couldn't do it at first, but I was like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to just keep doing it. I'm digging that hole brick by brick. I am opening up this prison cell and I am going to go after that light, even though I don't know exactly what it is or even how to do it necessarily. But my God, I am going to find it. And in that commitment to doing it, it started to find me because there was nothing there except for my own resistance to it. And so as I began just doing this, even though it was clumsy, even though it wasn't perfect, even though it didn't look pretty, and even though it wasn't how I thought it would go, the more I would do it, the better I would get at it, because a lot of things became self-evident. There's soul truths. There's just this universal flood or stream of information that is always there, and it's always available.
Would you call that mystical?
I would call it reality. Like at this point, it is that makes up more of reality and this perceived dissociation that most people embody. So
And that's the psychic state of awareness everyone wants to achieve. When that journey, which you just spoke about through persistence, started showing you the many layers of reality, what I call is the uni world layered on top of each other. And every layer comes back, and sometimes it's a this layer, and sometimes it's a this layer, and sometimes it's a pulling out the sheet all around you, and whoa, new things to see on the horizon.
And right, the crazy thing is, it's actually that makes up more of what is actually quote unquote real.
Real, exactly. That's why it's on that borderline of real mystical to the people who have not had mystical experience. Like commitment, courage, and all that isn't mystical, but it creates this byproduct of mysticism and of the different layers of reality.
I love that's a great way of looking at it. And not to say that this isn't mystical, but once you start reconnecting to it and you start returning to a state of wholeness, you're like, oh, okay, this is actually reality. And then
it's a natural state of being.
It's exactly.
It's a natural state. And the mystical experience is realizing, whoa, it is a natural state of being, and we are that powerful. Now what?
Now exactly
now
that I was
what?
gonna say. I love that, but that's when I was gonna say, like, yes, that's when it starts to become really mystical. Like at first it's just a reality check, but once you've gotten into that reality check, then you can really explore, like, what is the potential here?
Exactly. Unlimited.
Unlimited. And you know what else I noticed about it too? Because when I was in prison, you know, I was being assaulted and just all the things that happen in a prison. But as I really started getting in coherence with these natural rhythms, these states of being that are in everybody, I began to watch how the men around me began to change as a result of it. So these hardened, tough, just angry at everybody and the whole world type mentalities would suddenly become like little kids. You could see awe and wonder and imagination in their eyes. And they didn't really know what was happening, but they're like, what is this? What's happening? Like, what, you know? And I was like, oh my God. I was doing something internally that was having an external effect. But what was so beautiful,
you were changing your pheromones, which they have no control over their pheromones, which immediately puts them into that state of what your pheromones are emanating. Joy, happiness, love, creation, outcreation.
it's a habit, right? Like that, it's a
Yeah.
choice that we do over and over that turns into a habit. But why don't most people do it? Well, they don't know that they're even capable of doing it because we've grown up in a culture where nobody really teaches us. But even more than that, now there's people out there like saying, hey, here's some pretty practical steps to do. But a lot of people don't want to do it because it means they have to change the way they've always been doing things. And that's a threat to the ego or to the part of themselves that resist wanting to change. But I found the antidote to that is, or an antidote, because everybody's going to have a different process to get there. I just kept considering, like, how much do I value what I don't know? You know, because I know that there's this innate intelligence in my body that's way more intelligent than I am. You know, now I can focus on that, or I can focus on all these problems that I think I have that brought me to a place of suffering. But when I focus on this, when I take what little bit of intelligence I have and focus on this innate intelligence of my body, suddenly I start becoming more intelligent as a human. And my ego, even though it resists wanting to keep focusing on that, eventually it starts to subside. That persistence of, wow, there's something miraculous happening to me and through me. And I'm going to prioritize creating a relationship with that more than I'm going to stay in the state of dysfunction that I'm, you know, that's brought me to this point. It gets easier. And it gets your whole perception of self and reality becomes so much more rich than all the money you could ever have, than all the anything you could ever have. And that's really it. It's a state to, it's returning to a state where you've prioritized this so much that by paying attention to it, it starts paying attention to you. And the rewards are infinite, you could say.
So we have a question from Eileen Sullivan. Can you describe this innate intelligence a little bit more? And what I want to add this 2 cents before we go in. So our DNA instrument of experience is the instrument, is the guitar, but it's the genius that can make the guitar play. So go a little more in depth onto the innate intelligence that you were tapping into inside the body itself.
I love it because it's a great question. And at first, like I said earlier, I didn't have the ability to articulate this because I had to work through these processes of actually connecting to it so that I could really understand what this was. But innate intelligence is simply this. There is some kind of energy that is animating our physical form. It's causing our heart to beat. It's causing our lungs to breathe. It's causing all these autonomic functions to take place in our bodies faster than the speed of light. And I realized, like, okay, I'm not doing that, right? Me, Seth, the person I believe myself to be, can affect that, but I'm not the one who's ultimately doing that. There is something happening to me, through me, that is way greater than my ability to perceive it or my ability to be able to perceive it up until that point. And because I realized from a very common sense perspective that it was there, I made distinct choices and consistent choices to shift my identification from an external realm to focusing on all the people, places, problems, and things around me to an internal realm where I'm focusing on whatever this internal energy is that's animating my being and being with it, communing with it, forming a relationship with it to the degree that it began to form its own order inside of me, which is called coherence, you could say. Now there's a name for it, heart-brain coherence. But that, as a result of me continuously revisiting that, I began to realize that this innate intelligence of my body, in conjunction with me focusing on it, allowed a greater amplification to take place where it became more orderly, more coherent. And when that happened, holy moly, because then it's like you start tapping into this natural coherence that makes up the primary or predominant elements of our universe, right? And it's no longer like, oh, this is mystical or new or weird. You're like, this is reality. And now reality has a plan for me. It's working with me, not against me. I was the one working against me. And
Your inner self was the incoherence, but your deeper self was the coherence.
it's beautifully said. And that's exactly it. And I just chose to make that deeper self, that internal world of perception, more important than the external.
So that the incoherence is your sympathetic and parasympathetic, which stores all of the programs with the self-defeating habit patterns, et cetera, stuff we talk about all the time. When we get into our deeper self, the vagus nerve, which aligns the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and all major organs and all functions are connected to the vagus nerve directly to the crown, there is where the coherence lies. Now, there are times people delude and deceive themselves so much that even the vagus nerve is occupied by this discoherent energy, which makes it very difficult to be in the body itself.
Beautifully said, yes. And that's the reality of it, right? But the more you commit to this, the more you feel connected to this source of energy that is animating the body. Thus, the more apt you are to feel comfortable being in your own body. And those were like the beginning stages of it. It was like, oh, actually, I love this. It feels great. Like I can really get into this.
It's a blissful state that constantly repaid you enough to know The more I enter that blissful state, the more I am gifting myself this greater journey of awareness.
And again, like back to what we were saying before, like then it just becomes common sense, we're like, this state feels so much better than the state of dysfunction that I allowed to put up the temporary illusion of disconnection. That why would I choose to go back into it now that I've so consistently chosen to come out of it, to go ahead.
I have a question that I get asked a lot, but this is a good question and a good state. Now, I have this personal thing about people going into curiosity learning, and true curiosity learning is the most destructive form of learning we have today. So Seth, can you please comment on the distinction between curiosity learning as an internal creative exploration as relative to external information consumption?
There's different levels of perception, right? And different people are at different places in their own journey to becoming awakened and realizing what that is. So for some people, they may be so blunted from their own internal source that it might take an external source of information to help them trigger a remembrance that this is possible. Whereas other people might not need so much convincing, and instead they're going to be like, I feel something in me, I'm just going to start connecting with it, and it feels so good, I'm curious to know, okay, if I can connect to it a little bit, what would it be like to connect to it even more?
Which ends the curious state, and then it becomes a focus state. That's the key to understanding this part of the philosophy. Curiosity ends, focused learning takes over. And it's the focused learning that creates true neural pathways. Curiosity learning uses your background neural pathways.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's funny because I love the way you word things. I love how much you have all these philosophies like coined. It's great. It's amazing. For me, again, like I literally, like, I didn't read books about this. I've probably read less than 10 books in my entire life, even though I write, even though I'm into that, because I think I was so focused, like you said, on, all this stuff didn't come into focus until it really came out of focus for me. It took like just feeling like I was so twisted and lost and out of coherence with reality for me to suddenly decide, like, I'm going to forge a new pathway, a new neural networks that reflect, one, my commitment to reestablishing this or even just establishing it. And then once I realized that I could do that and that my focused awareness of it created an amplification of it in me, then suddenly I started to realize, wow, I can take this to levels that I never even knew possible. Because at that point, I was generating feelings from inside of me because the body's holding on to so much stuff from the past that we put in there. We loaded it up with all this stuff. And when suddenly it's lightened up, we've lightened our load and we feel better. And then that same part of our body has new life in it. And when we focus on that part of our body with this coherent energy in place and with our ability to envision or imagine what could be possible, then we're activating the innate capacity of that energy center in our body to start producing new chemicals, new hormones, new expressions of reality that we didn't even know was possible before.
Well said.
Yeah.
And this leads into a question from Santo. Can Seth give the audience some light on how he translated his internal learning experiences during his term in prison to the outside world when he was released? Some examples of the highs and lows of learning.
That's a great question. And it's probably one that could be answered in a multitude of ways. But what I did specifically was, like I said, I made a commitment that I was going to change no matter what. But I also somehow intuitively knew that if I write out what's happening to me, then it's almost like a cathartic purging in the sense that I'm taking all of this shit that is just stuck in me, I'm unpacking it, and I'm writing it out onto paper, getting it out of me, right? And then looking at it objectively and realizing, oh, that's not who I am. That's what I was maybe, or it's what I thought I was, but it's not actually what I am. And so by writing out I wrote my entire life experience out, thinking that if I did that, I'm going to have the ability to look for self-defeating patterns or belief systems or things that could hold me back. And sure enough, right away, I saw them just in writing out my own life experience, and just getting that out of you, putting it onto paper and looking at it objectively, you feel so much lighter. You feel so much better. So that's what I did that kind of initiated that process or began it. And it's funny because I put the book out in the world, and I never would have put that book out in the world because it was so personal. And the intention was never to put that out in the world. I mean, there's things I wouldn't want to tell anybody that I have completely put out there for the entire world to see. And the reason why is because as I began this process of cleansing myself, you could say, or becoming more in alignment with this miraculous energy that is animating me and activating all these glands and energy centers and plexus centers that are all throughout my body, I began purging at such a profound and deep level that I was getting all of my own personal stuff out of the way. And I realized that I was processing other things, collective things, deeper things, ancestral things. But I was only processing them because I had done enough personal cleansing to be able to start working at those levels. And so the book, I put that out there as a way of like, if I am brutally honest and just opening my heart and showing my greatest vulnerabilities to everybody, then I'm giving others the permission to do the same, to break down social stigmas, to break down barriers of human communication that keep us enslaved and trapped. And that's part of this greater karma to dharma cleansing that just happens naturally.
And you did it out of your own body awareness. Now, one of the big teachings that I've been putting out for the longest time is to people to sit before what I call a ceremonial fire, something they put prayers of in front of before the fire started, have an opening prayer, and then tell their story to the fire, just like you did for the purging, because you give the exact description of why you tell your story to the fire, so it's out of you. And the element of the fire helps you turn to ask the subject matters that are charge and polarity, or where you have charge and polarity and are coloring the story, even though you know it happened a different way. Okay. That leads into what I call the out loud name it to claim it system. And then there's the on paper name it to claim it system, which is even more potent because you had to think about what you were writing and then had to go through the different thought structures and concepts of, if I'm going to go to this brutal honesty state, I've got to have all of my senses active to look for my avoidance mechanisms.
Yes.
Okay?
Beautiful.
That's the key. And once you charge directly at your avoidance mechanisms, the out loud name it to claim it or the writing system becomes easy.
You come to a recognition that you can't fool yourself. You can't fool the universe. You can't really fool anybody or anything. And so you realize that why would I even try to, and you get to a point where you're like, it feels so good to be honest with myself, to be clear with myself, that I want to create more of that in me and around me. And the more somebody's committed to that, the more they're able to find ways or just ways that come out of nowhere that assist them in furthering that process.
So here's a little bit of a left field question we talked about before the show. Please discuss what Andrew often refers to as love and lighters bullshit attitudes, more specifically in practical terms. Those are the people that fart rainbows and butterflies and yet don't pay their bills and wonder why the world is always getting them down, because they're stuck in that state where they feel that energy but do nothing with it.
It's a great question. One, I would say that's the least of anybody's concerns if they're really interested in awakening to their own potential. You know, I know that sounds kind of harsh, but in the beginning, everybody and everything around us is going to reflect back to us the most predominant internal state that we are holding on to or perpetuating out to the world. So what I would do is be like, okay, yeah, I can judge them as having spiritual ego or this, that, and the other thing. But what if it's not actually them? What if it's my perception of them or something? And I had to really be like, wow, okay, what would it be like for me to take full responsibility for everything, for all of their problems, for all the doom, gloom, trauma, drama, karma, all of that? Like, if I was to fully take responsibility for all of that, what would that look like? Suddenly, I wouldn't be pointing the finger at anybody or anything anymore, because all they were doing was reflecting back to me an internal state of being that, whether I knew it or not at the time, I just kept constructing and holding up and putting out to the world. And the more I began to change that internal state of being, or the more somebody decides they're going to change that internal state, they're going to see that the things that are reflected back to them are going to be very different than they initially were. Or if the things are being reflected back to them the way they usually were, they're going to perceive them in a different way. And
well, see, we've got two sides of the philosophy coin here. Both are right. Yeah. Neither is wrong. It is your perspective of the answer that may influence rightness or wrongness or any charge and polarity to this. Because when it comes to the reflection clause, I call that, as teachers, people will reflect stuff that they want you to reflect back at them, even though you're not that reflection. That's the challenge of being the teacher. And this whole reflection teaching, some of it has so much light worker salad, word salad behind it. It falls into everything's your reflection. And that isn't true. In an unlimited universe of 100% free will choice, not everything is your reflection. Sometimes we stand our ground and go, I'm not accepting your projection of me being your reflection. And my answer back to you is what you need to perceive and receive what's wrong in your situation of forced reflection.
I love it. You break it down. That's great. Yeah. So if I was to simplify what I was saying, is the reflection that I'm seeing in the world going to outdo my own internal state of coherence? Because that's when the rubber meets the road. And that's when I needed to decide, okay, what is reality? How much am I showing up for it? How much am I taking responsibility for my state of coherence? Which is, go ahead.
That other part, when you're saying the philosophy, we're splitting semantics of philosophy here. Neither is right or wrong here. When you were saying taking on, if we take the word take on, it's naturally a martyred state. Perceive, understand, and conclude, but not take on, changes the whole statement. And it's the key of how we can convince ourselves to not be martyrs by checking our words and our true intentions behind them.
Beautiful, so powerful and so direct. And I'd like to add to that, like a lot of people, because of all the things that have happened in the past, this martyrdom, a lot of people have these belief systems that, you know, things are going to keep being the way they used to be. And that's taking the past and projecting it into the future, when the reality is, from a quantum perspective or an unlimited perspective, for all we know, we might be right at the very cutting edge of the evolutionary impulse of life itself, creating something that may have never existed before, right here, right now. And if that's not enough to get somebody excited, you know,
something's wrong with that person. Exactly. that needs self-healing, self-nurturing, self-motivation, self-discovery, and an accountability checklist to keep you moving on that.
And look at, who's somebody, I heard somebody say recently, like, and maybe a lot of people said this, but in an age of information, ignorance is a choice, right? There's so much information and people out there doing what we're doing now that somebody can take a little bit from here or there or wherever and start putting together a roadmap that's going to lead to themselves, whether, no matter how they're going to do it, no matter what point of life they're at. We can do this. We were designed to do this. We were like literally made to do this. And most people don't know that, and they don't realize it till they die. But that's the thing. If you're going to die and you're going to face the unknown, why not face it right here, right now?
The now what part. Are you ready to face the now what? And no matter
from a perception standpoint,
exactly, no matter what state of coherence or incoherence or both simultaneous you're in, the now what applies to everybody in any situation. Now what means choose. What is in your choice field? The limitations of your choices you give yourself, or the unlimited choices you might discover through self-discovery.
God, I love this. So that's all it is, people. Like, just choosing to override your own limitations, choosing constantly, making choices. Like, a lot of people vacillate, they go back and forth. Like, make a decision that you are going to rise above your own conditioning and keep making that decision every single day. And as you keep affirming that in you, however that looks for you, you'll start getting clues, whether internally or externally, of steps you can take that will help you further that process if you're truly committed to making that choice.
So here's a question from LG Stilo 5. Hold on one second. Mm-hmm. Now what when you have no more ideas?
Oh my God. The universe, you could say, or this source of energy that is animating us, that's gifting us the opportunity to live, is nothing but one great, incomprehensible, unimaginable idea. I mean, it's almost like it has given birth to everybody and everything that has ever existed beyond anybody's ability to comprehend or imagine it, to the degree that there is limitless possibility just abounding with every breath we take, with every step we make. And I don't see how there is any limitation.
Right, exactly. The limitation is in your very nature of the statement. If you have no more ideas, you have something limiting you in this whole unlimited universal internal perspective of the self. So when one asks the question, now what, I have no ideas, your creativity is stunted at some level. And that you've got to re-enter that coherent, child, innocent state of self-creation.
I love that. And I'll add to it the beauty of that. Like, somebody might be like, oh, okay, now what? Like, and feel like, oh, really? That's my lesson. That's what I'm here to learn. But that's the thing. Like, if you can embrace these lessons, no matter how they look, and really be like, oh, that's it. That's where I'm held back. But look at it in a way where you're like, wow, that's really it. And if I can move beyond that state, what's on the other side? And learn to appreciate your life lessons and your ability to perceive it no matter what. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't feel bad. Like, be like, yes, this is a gift that is strategically placed in front of my perception of self or reality. That is the key and the gateway, the doorway to greater and greater levels of possibility.
So here's a question from Miranda. Now what equals fight evil and assist others? That is actually a limitation. Choose yourself before you choose any faction. Self-healing, self-nurturing, self-education, self-mastery, and self-illumination is the greatest gift you can do for all of humanity. You don't need to fight anything. And that's the big delusion of the Great Awakening. Fight, fight, fight. No. You don't even need to resist. You out-create it. And with that being said, if you are listening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope, or any other of the places that we are broadcasting live to, and want to be a part of the chat room where we select questions from, or be a part of the callers we're going to have later in the show, Robert has the information here up on the screen. The meeting ID number is there. And if you want to call in via phone anywhere in the world, all the information is there. All right, Robert, leave that information up there for just a minute so people that are trying to figure out how to do it. So Seth, we have gone deep into the philosophy, and some of the positioning of words out of flow can be dualistic, and that's the nature of philosophy. But then there's the greater parts of what we're talking where it isn't dual. We're talking about the singularity that is you. We're both singularities of awareness of our duality. That's the level of our philosophy and our internal owning of who we are. That journey for others to accept that singularity as a part of their duality is what I call the non-competition process. What do you have to say about the term, philosophical term, non-competitional process with the self?
I love that. It's a total surrendering into everything as it truly is. And the commitment of doing that naturally dissolves the parts of us that feel stuck in this thing that allows us to keep thinking we're separate from a unified source of self. So competition, right? Isn't it funny how much competition has been ingrained into us as a result of the world we live in, to the degree that everybody is competing with everybody to try to get ahead. It's a dog eat dog world. We have all these external beliefs that encourage us to cause an internal state of competition with ourselves and with reality. And in there is where the nuggets are. It's where the gold is. It's where you can really, really become the alchemist and turn these base metals of lower emotions and thought processes into higher expressions of metals that just glimmer and shine according to these greater frequencies. So competition is one of these things that, it's like you were saying before, like this idea that we're fighting, or that us and them are all like, these are all things that you eventually come to make peace with and come to accept and overcome, because you realize that it's just something that's trying to get your attention. But when you're in a state of dualism or competition with yourself, you're not able to see that. You're not able to see that external thing as something that's trying to get your attention. And so you either become victimized by it, or you realize that's what it's doing and you choose to self-empower. That's
the next part of that journey is equal co-creation. It is where the two sides, the duality accepts its singularity and they're not competing, and then they want to co-create together. That is where the great teachings, the teachers, the powerful emanations, the mystical experiences come from. Non-competition, equal co-creation, non-competition are a balanced state of the self, who then can achieve a state of emanation that I call non-hierarchical order. Equal co-creation, non-competition, non-hierarchical order. Those three states of emanation are key factors of applying the philosophy to our state of emanation. So our daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly flow reflects balancing these three structures that help define our inner and outer self as the singularity.
I love that so much, because it's, again, coming back to this idea that for all we know, we're at the cutting edge of the evolutionary impulse. Now what, right? What do we do now? We have the ability to recognize, through our willingness to be participants, co-participants in this great process that's unfolding through us, that as we are participants in it and we are aware of it and we're watching things happen and unfold at greater and greater levels from this place of perception within us that is expanding and growing according to the nature of reality as it is right now, it gives us the ability to realize that even though everything comes from a single source, that each one of us in our perceived separation of that have been gifted abilities and gifts that are unique to us, but that when we consciously are contributing and being a participant in this process, those gifts or those unique aspects of us become ours to work with and to play with and to offer as gifts to this world when we're in coherence with it. So
when one wants to mystify what he has just said, it is ceremony, ritual, prayer, all expressions of the singular self who are in contribution to this greater awareness, so more co-creativity and creativity flow through the self out of these honored moments of self-acceptance, self-nurturing, and self-growth. The very nature of prayer, ritual, and ceremony is to do all of these things as a part of this regular daily practice, so we can reflect in our daily life what we've learned about the coherent state.
And what else are we going to do, right? Like what are the other options to that? Like, we can dwell in the past, we can dwell in our problems, we can, like, why not choose to engage in these beautiful practices, these things that any one of us can do, that society doesn't necessarily teach us to do, but that we somehow know we can do, and then work at getting better at them and practicing them. And again, that's all this really is, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm any different than anybody. I feel like, if anything, I've just got more hours in doing this because I love it that much and I value it that much. And it's that important to me, but that's only because I made a decision for it to be. So
I had a similar state for the longest time until I began a self-realization process through listening to my shows over and over and over and over and over again. One of the things that makes me unique is I've listened to 95% of all my shows at least once, sometimes twice. Why? Because there's a moment where the skill is off and I'm perceiving myself and the audience. And there's a whole different set of lessons that come from that. And as I began to watch 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 700, 1,000, almost 1,000 shows, I began to realize my greater purpose of doing that at such a high state that the bar for awakenedness is here, but it's not that many steps for anyone to get to it. It's not. It's not. It's not that many steps. And in my own reflection of my own journey and my own teachings is where I realized I am different than a lot of people, out of my dedication, commitment, and courage to do this with the joy behind it.
See, just that alone is enough for everybody to listening to take that, like, really connect to the part of yourself that could feel similarly about your own life and your own trials and tribulations and obstacles and joys. And it's that level of dedication to it that really gets the results. I mean, it's that simple.
So lately on the show, I've been defining effort for people, what C plus effort is to what A plus effort. So what does effort really mean from your philosophy? And how is it applicable and something that people can reflect on going, is my effort equivalent to this?
So I see that as a progressive realization of a worthy ideal, right? One, you've chosen that connecting to this awakened or higher aspect of you is a priority. And so in the beginning, it's a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes it can be for a lot of people because we have so much working against us that we have put there, but that we didn't know we put it there. So in the beginning, we're making this choice, we're affirming it over and over, and we're creating new neural pathways that start to take greater root in our entire being, that with more practice, more repetition, more commitment, start to ingrain themselves deeper, like roots of a great tree, deeper and deeper into our being. And when it does that, you could look at the old past experiences, the traumas, the stuff like that. They just don't have anywhere to live as this new tree, this new root system begins to take place. And the roots of this tree take those traumas and they convert it. They turn it into something where it doesn't have anywhere to live. So it either needs to become fertilizer or soil to this greater tree, or it's just going to get pushed out of the garden altogether. It just has nowhere left to go. So it's in the commitment to creating this new sense of self and witnessing bit by bit, every day, every moment, as much as you can, the growth of this internal process within you that allows you to get better and better at doing it. And the better you get at doing it, the more you want to do it, and the more your dedication to it levels up. And you're like, my God, I want to take my C, whatever, C plus average. I want to take it to A plus 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 times infinity. It just happens the more you do this, because infinite potential and possibilities start coming into your view of self and reality. And my God, if that doesn't get you lit up, it will get you lit up. So if you're not seeing it, then it means that there's something there that is yours alone to own, to learn from, to get beyond. And if you can't get beyond it, well, you just got to keep working at it.
That's why when in the course of our personal human events, there comes that moment when we look in the mirror of meaning of ourself and something looks back at us. Raising of one's awareness. That is the time to ask questions of the self and reflection. At that time, when you're making that momentary need of mystical justification, it will be the few who choose to dissolve old beliefs and habit patterns that create habitual abuse of the self. The next part of our journey is understanding our legacy. The book was the beginning of your legacy. And what is your greater legacy that you want to leave for the world? You've been to the mirror of meaning. You saw your many selves. You had your questions. And now what's the legacy you want to leave?
I want to help as many people who resonate with the part of themselves that feels activated or in resonance with the part of me that I'm aware of and have cultivated to get to this point in my life, to do something similar, to be aware that infinite possibility isn't just available, but in many ways it's your birthright. And start living your life in a way where you're committed to taking greater and greater greater and greater steps towards really creating a level of coherence within your being, so that this greater universal coherence begins to reflect itself through your own unique blueprint of reality. And I know this is possible because I've seen people very close to me already transform. And I've seen so many seeds be planted as a result of me being so dedicated and doing this no matter what, that I know it's possible for countless people to begin waking up to this part of themselves and embodying this part of themselves. And I'm here to be a cheerleader, to be not a guru, not a spiritual teacher, but to be like a soul reflective mirror, in that I want people to face everything that they didn't even know that they could face, and to overcome it. And then I want to talk with these people. I want to create with these people. I want us all to create together from this greater place, because, oh my God, we're literally at the cusp of something so great, so unimaginable, but we got to start imagining that it's possible.
Right. I want to read a quote from one of my speeches called The Hub of Interconnectivity. As the creators of our own reality, our self-truths are incumbent on our ability to be vigilant and disciplined, holding them as self-evident now, without perception, deception filters guiding us back into fear, doubt, or the many voices of self-depravity. Many of us believe the greatest human power of potential is within our ability to independently think, to choose our own goals and live our own dreams. Within the heart of humankind lives the natural instinct to know freedom. Here exists that independent psychological predisposition to chart our own course. Seth, your story is about charting your own course. And you are a teacher. And what we have as an opportunity is to help people chart their own course, to create what I call a fourth dimensional personal human business plan through the self-practice. The daily practice is ultimately is what's going to help you understand year to year, decade to decade, the things that I've done myself that have given me this independent psychological predisposition to chart my course out of my free will.
I love that. That is so beautiful. My God. I and it's true. Like I always tell people, like, okay, if you resonate with what I'm saying, if you can learn from it, if you can look at me or Andrew or whoever as however you want, but really take it to heart and realize that, ultimately, and I'll speak for myself, I feel like if you resonate with what I'm saying and what I'm conveying and the frequency that it comes through me, then let that be the inspiration that helps you become aware of that part of yourself. And once you've cultivated your own perception of it so deeply as we have, then it starts to become primary in your own life, in that it is helping you chart your own course. It's giving you directives and ideas and ways to move forward through whatever it is that might be in your way. When you've connected to that place, to this degree, you won't need to listen to me or anybody else ever again, because you'll be listening to it, the source of it all, communicating to you and through you. And then I want to meet people at that place. I want to create businesses. I want to create whatever the current paradigm of the world that we're in, whatever the structures are in place at that time. I want to create whatever is in the world at that time. Use the structures that are in place to create new structures, to create new levels of being that are limited only by our capacity to imagine their potential.
Well said. Now, as part of a conversation that we've been having, there's an external world of politics, conspiracy that has everyone's panties in a bundle right now. And in some situations, they got multiple knots and they've got a Q wedgie going on. Okay. Yes, I said Q wedgie, everyone. A lot of people are stuck in this external, stuck validating everything through the external. What advice do you have for people who know the spiritual journey is there, but cannot get past the addiction of information overload?
You said it right there. It's exactly what it is addiction. And being somebody who has gone through severe addiction, I went through heroin addiction, like really, really severe, to the degree that I overdosed many, many times. I should be dead right now. It is a complete miracle that I'm even alive. But as a result of making choices to do that to myself, and then having to deal with the aftermath, the repercussions of like, wow, that was a brilliant move. But now I got to deal with it because I did it. I'm the one that did it. I kept going back and revisiting, like, what is the root cause that allowed me to become an addict in the first place? And for the longest time, I thought it was traumas that I experienced when I was a kid. I really believed, I was like, oh, it was these traumas that I couldn't deal with, and that caused me to want to try to cover it up with drugs, numb it out so it didn't exist. But after I had gotten, and I've been clean for 23 years, by the way, so this is something that happened a long time ago. But after I got clean, after I got clear and started really assessing the deeper levels and mechanisms that caused me to become, or to get into that level of addiction, I realized that what I was actually addicted to wasn't the stress or the traumas themselves. It was my body's own reaction to the chemicals that were created as a result of that. And so I began working on those levels to release the chemical addiction that my body was creating, like this adrenal fatigue, this overload. But then even further and deeper into that, I realized that I was simply addicted to my ego. And that's when it was like, whoa, okay, this is a lot closer to the root of the problem. And when I began realizing that and being aware of that's where the addiction was, then suddenly it was like, now that I know that, now that I'm aware of this with this level of perceptive sophistication that I have intentionally cultivated throughout the hours and days and years of my life, not only did it not have the power over me that it once did, but I was able to view it as something, as brutal as it was, something really beautiful that was put in my path, that was put there and offered as a potential eye opener, as a third eye opener, as a soul awakening mechanism. And when I see people in politics and all the things that they're just caught up, it's just simply that. You're just addicted to your body's own mechanisms in response to all of these things that you've been conditioned by in the world. So part of the spiritual path is just bringing yourself back to deeper and deeper levels of awareness. And these things have a way of resolving themselves on their own if you're that committed to it.
When you face the addiction up front and understand that your ego is a huge part of it. Now, politics and heroin, are they any different? Yes, they are, but at the end, they're the same thing.
Okay? Yeah.
It is what the changes in your bodies that are done from the chemical addiction to the use of the adrenal gland that has all these other side effects on the body. Okay? So there are people that get addicted to meditation too.
Yeah.
And it becomes a great disservice to them. Anything that you overdo and you compulse it and become obsessive compulsive about, you are then doing the body harm, the spirit harm. So obsessive compulsive disorder, a lot of people develop it as a coping mechanism, but actually it's a limitation. Never was the coping mechanism, because they've got a major disassociation within them. Now, when it comes to politics, conspiracy, and social media is the needle and the information is the drug. Okay? One can't go on without the other. Okay? They're inseparable. Now, the journey to separating the needle and the drug, and the choice to use the needle and the drug, be it Facebook and conspiracy or any of the other information overload techniques that are out there that are being using against us in a social engineering mind control state. That is the truth of our reality. Our reality is a giant social engineering mind control experiment we're all falling for. When we choose that inner body awareness and the understanding and the applications of the philosophy, it's very easy to see the social engineering techniques that are out there. And all you have to do is bypass the technique and understand, what is this information actually going to do for me in a greater sense? When the people are talking politics, so you want to talk policy? Bullshit. No human being talking about policy ever changes the policy at the highest level. Policy is written by the 110 corporations who run the 535 members of Congress and Senate. There is no separation between Democrats and Republicans. They're all owned by the same person, the same set of people. That is the social engineering system we're all falling for. And when we pull our consciousness out of that thing, and we're like, oh my God, all this dirty shit, we realize their purpose in information overload is to overload you and stay addicted, just like a drug, just like a corner dealer.
My gosh, beautiful. And maybe to add on to that, and this is funny because you're talking before about this whole thing of like there's so much word salad with being a reflection to the world and a lot of spiritual egotism associated with it. But I feel like in many ways, this addiction to the response that politics creates in us is what's giving it life to keep being the way it is.
Yes, and that's when we pull our energies out of it, it won't have the same life force.
Exactly.
And that's how the Great Awakening happens, when we pull our life force and energy out of giving it definition, meaning, and actual harvested life force.
And it's so simple, right? And I wrote something about it recently, and I'll be careful quoting it because I don't know the depth of it, but apparently Bhutan, the country of Bhutan, their GDP is happiness, meaning their gross national product is based upon a state of being that the government decided has more value than a physical product, that corporations are making money from. If that's even relatively true, then what are we really working to create? What kind of systems are we supporting with our dollars? Because a lot of people don't realize, like, yes, we vote for people, but we're voting every single day with where we spend our money. But even more than that, we are voting like spiritually with where our attention is focused. And holy moly, you know, that's where the choice to, are you voting for separation or are you voting for unity? Pretty simple choice.
Voting means nothing. As another blanket statement I will make, it's all decided by who? The Electoral Congress, Electoral College. So your vote means nothing. Now I want to go to this next state, perception of teachers with skills, guruism versus what we're talking, self-illumination. Now, a lot of people mix marketing, and this is what dumbs down the teachings because they take a marketing class or they've never taken a marketing class and they're trying to describe who they are and what they do to a general audience who doesn't even understand what you're talking about, which creates this giant word salad that has vegetables and meat all trying to be served to everyone's individual choices of vegetarians, meat eaters, omnivorous, and everyone's got to pick out of the salad what they want. Okay? This is the challenge of self-promotion. Okay? People have dogmas of belief. Okay? And their dogmas are going to drive them to what they believe or don't believe. But then there are people who are ready to let go of dogmas, say, I don't want your word salad. I'm ordering a la carte, what works in the moment. And I am one of the biggest people that promoted for the longest time, use the a la carte system of what works for you in the moment.
Couldn't be any better. I agree with you wholeheartedly and fully. And I know there's so many people that they read a few books and all of a sudden they sound like they know what they're talking about. But the more in alignment you are with the natural rhythms of your body, which is what we always keep coming back to, the more you have a better ability to discern what they're offering, if it's right for you or not in that moment. Because again, there really is no separation, and they're not wrong, quote unquote wrong, for doing that. Everybody is just doing what they're doing. And you, with where you are at this point in your life, is going to make a decision of what you value, of what's important for you. And that's your right. That's your choice. And it's really that simple.
Making that choice seems really hard for people now. They're going from teacher to teacher, meditation to meditation, and they end up getting what I call a PhD in YouTube, which is not an education. It makes you dangerous to yourself. You put committed discipline and courage into self-education. You didn't get a YouTube PhD to get there. Let's talk about the YouTube PhD people and how destructive it actually is to them in the end. A doctorate in Google.
It's so I love that. It's such a great way of thinking about it. And it's true. Like there's so much information that it can be information overload. But again, that's when we as aspirants who are choosing to connect to the greater aspects of our own self have to exercise some self-responsibility. It's like if you're watching somebody or something and you resonate with what they're saying for a little bit and it's empowering you, you can get better at feeling if your energy field is going to continue being empowered by it. If it's not, then you have to be a big boy or a big girl and recognize when something isn't helping you and then make different choices. And you can do that because you are not any different than anybody or anything that has ever existed on this planet. You just believe yourself to be based upon conditioning that you have been subjected to mostly throughout the course of this life. And that's okay. It happened. But now that you recognize that's happening, you can make better choices. And if you don't know how to make better choices, you make a decision that somehow, some way, better choices are going to find their way to you, and they will. And when you do that through all these things we were talking about tonight, you take away what works for you and you put it into practice, you're going to know if somebody or something is going to continue to feed you at the levels of soul, at the deeper levels that you truly want to grow from. So
I'll make this statement when it comes to people with 10 YouTube PhDs. You're not a researcher. You're not a researcher. And a lot of people give themselves this, I'm a researcher. No, you're not. You've got a YouTube PhD in watching videos. You only have the neuropathic understanding of watching the video. You have not written anything out. You have not created any papers. You have not put charts and stuff together to take that information and make a much deeper understanding other than auditory neuropathic input.
I love your tough love approach with this, because a lot of people might have resistance to that. They might be like, oh, you're insulting me. You're insulting my mechanisms that got me to where I am. But you know what?
I did it on purpose because they're stuck. And we have a huge population of watchers and listeners who have 5 PhDs in YouTube. They listen to every Ancient Aliens, every this, every that. They could cite it. They could cite the stuff about it, but they've never actually done anything with it. They didn't write a paper. They didn't write a book. They didn't put a PowerPoint together.
Look, and that's why, like, those people are here and you're watching, you're feeling this. To what degree are you capable of interacting with those who are going to really tell you the things you don't want to hear? Because if somebody's feeding you a constant stream of love and light, that's great until it starts to trigger the parts of yourself that aren't love and light. Okay. And that's usually what happens is it'll feel great. It'll be wonderful. And you're like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden, ow, what is that? I just hit a sore point. There's something that's sticking. And then suddenly that person or thing or that information stream that you're getting from isn't your friend anymore, or it isn't your teacher.
I'm going to use a piece of tough love. Regina Schultz, you don't have to write a paper or a PowerPoint to synthesize information and living it. Share with you're regurgitating the information. To make new neural pathways about the subjects and truly be a researcher is to go through the creationary process with the information, just like when you were in a studying state trying to write a paper. You're engaging the sympathetic and the parasympathetic and the vagus nerve to go through masterful out-creation of the information itself. So pattern recognition is synchronistic. That's the next level learning. And in the beginning of the conversation, that's what Seth was trying to talk about, how to synthesize the learning state out of curiosity and regurgitative learning.
Again, like, we don't, you know what, like, in my own experience, there's a lot of things and a lot of people that presented a lot of things to me that weren't love and light, that I didn't like, that I didn't want to hear. And you know what, in the beginning, I was like, F you, like, no, like, no. But I realized that was me not taking responsibility for the part of myself that was resisting what they're presenting. Now, obviously, if somebody's like hurting you, then you should know enough not to keep putting yourself in the line of fire. But if they're challenging you or triggering a part of yourself that you're either trying to bypass or not look at, then you've got a decision to make. Am I going to go ahead?
Regina, I know you're not offended. I presented that as a directed energy because you put something in the chat, but I know there's 100 other people that are saying the same thing. I don't have to write a paper. Well, you don't, but then you will stay in that regurgitative state. When you want to truly take the passion of what that is, and talk about it in a in a syncopation process with your super intelligence, you will do something with the information instead of it just being passive behind you.
It's entrainment, right? You are choosing to entrain your human faculties with the greater coherence of reality, ultimately. Because when you make a simple choice to say, I'm going to get into a state of heart-brain coherence, and I'm going to practice it over and over and over and over until the rest of the organs in my body get in alignment with this syncopation that's occurring between my heart and brain, then suddenly I'm feeling good. I'm feeling whole. I'm feeling like reality loves me. And from that place, you start experiencing greater levels of coherence, greater levels of syncopation, which offer you, your ego, greater levels of becoming a better person, to becoming a more virtuous person. And you become willing to face the things that you don't want to face, because the greater levels of coherence in you resonate at a frequency that is so much higher than the states you were in before as a result of your own ignorance. And you self-correct. You literally make choices where you course correct because you want to, because you love life enough to do that, because you love yourself enough to do that. And this becomes natural. You know, I put my life story out into the world full of things that, you know, at the time I'm writing and I'm like literally looking over my shoulder being, you know, like, man, I hope nobody sees me writing this, because there were things that were so deep and personal. But as a result of just doing this work unrelentingly, making it a priority above and beyond all of the past parts of myself that were a victim or that suffered, I became more willing incrementally to reveal everything that I was holding inside of myself to the world, because I recognized that I was helping others do the same. So
You got out of the pontificating masturbatory philosophy journey and said, now I have to walk my game. And it's a statement I've been using a long time. Pontificating philosophers or mental masturbators. They talk, but never do. And once you did, look what it gave you.
and again, it all just comes back like, this is common. It gets to a point where you realize this is common sense, but the common sense we're talking about here is in direct alignment with universal sense. And, you know, this is the levels we all have the ability to operate on. And it's really just the entryway, the doorway to something much greater, something really profound and beautiful. And ultimately, like, we want to be better stewards of this planet that we live on, right? But we got to first be better stewards of this garden that is growing wild inside of us.
That wild garden can be easily tamed without Roundup, without the mental Roundup that a lot of people use to clear up their mental garden. They grab the Roundup. Oh, it's all gone. It's all clear. No, seeds are still there. I want to talk about the seeds of doubt and how people constantly water their seeds of doubt, which creates fear, false evidence appearing real. That is a proliferating journey so many people are stuck with. Spray the Roundup, water the seeds of doubt.
It's such a beautiful way of presenting and putting it into perspective. But the reality is, we are so deeply, like, I'll use my own life example. Okay. I've had so many near-death experiences. I've had so many, both naturally and drug induced. And there were times when I was fearless. I didn't care one bit. I was like, I am leaving this world and I'm coming to visit you, not even afraid at all. And then there were other times when I was so afraid and just so resistant to the whole process. And I realized that it was okay to feel like that, because there's different layers and levels of our own perception process. And as long as we're willing to go through this journey and to keep facing these things, it's not like our fears go away. We just get endowed with a greater capacity to be able to face greater levels of fear. And in my own experience, the more I was able to do this, it was like, boom, different dimensions, different perceptual barriers just kept coming into my conscious awareness. But each one had its own level of limitations and things that were there to teach me to grow beyond that current level of perceptive capacity if I chose to do that. Now, by the time all that stuff started happening, I had already chosen so many times that I'm doing this no matter what. And like you said before, I just started like really upping my level of grading it, you know, from C minus to A plus 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 times infinity, that it's like, oh, excellent. A new fear that I didn't even know was there, with a greater augmented capacity to be able to face that fear in a way I never would have been able to before. Thank you. Thank you. Like, you become endowed with that level of commitment that is the result of your own devotion to this evolutionary process that is unfolding through you. It's incredible. So, yeah.
Beautifully put. As people on the journey to discovering their fears and the illogical energies behind it, there's a term I coined a while ago, perception deception filters, and then perspective deception filters. Now, perception and perspective are two vitally different subjects that use foundations from each to generate the perspective or the perception. And there are innate deception filters many people have. Some of it is ego, but a lot of it is cultural cultural things like um, Muslim people who have their view, or Indians who have their view, or Americans who have their view. Like racism is a cultural ancestral debt process. And these perception deception filters can keep us stuck with such fervent energy that until we look at how we perceive the world as a structure, we will always be deceived by those.
I love that. Again, it just, if we are caught up in that, if it's keeping us in a place that is preventing us from being able to evolve in accordance with this evolutionary impulse that we truly are, then it's up to us to be able to face these things with whatever level we are at and be honest with ourselves. You know, I had to look at all of these cultural and societal indoctrinations and really come to terms with them for what they actually were. And the more connected I became to this source that is giving me this innate intelligence in my body, the more I had to come to terms with the realization that all these things were figments of my imagination. I know that sounds crazy, but they were just figments of my imagination that I was feeding. And so they were just feeding off me. And it was like this perception, deception, dualism thing that it's like a parasite, right? Like it wasn't a symbiotic kind of relationship either. It
was parasitic.
Yes. Yes.
And ultimately that perception deception state, a lot of people don't even realize they suffer from it. And it is one of, let's just say, of the 10 major things stopping people from awakening, that's the top 3. That's one, and most people is the top 3, is those personal perception deception filters that have been taught to you by your mother and father, aunts and uncles, cousins, and so on and so forth. And then the culture of people that you've grown up with.
So that's something really, really worth. I'm sure you've explored it deeper with everybody listening, but that's something for everybody to really be aware of and to look at it for what it is, you know. And again, it all comes back to you have unknowingly allowed all of this stuff to filter into your perception of reality, and you have allowed it to fashion or mold and condition your perception of self and reality to the degree that these belief systems regarding what you think all these things are became predominant in your sense of awareness over this innate birthright that you have to be able to maintain a pure, uninhibited, unadulterated connection to your own source.
And that unadulterated connection to our own soul is your birthright and legacy to yourself. And understanding what your birthright and your legacy is the journey to the awakening itself. What are my birthrights? What is my legacy with them? What will I do this lifetime that will make a difference in my 7 future generations? I often talk about the 7 past generations, the living generation, and then the 7 future generations. Being of contribution and service in the moment of now, we get to alter the infinite set of limitations or choices to the future generations by acting in the now, being responsible to our level of awareness, so that the future generations who would have never had a choice and potential until we understood the power of now and the power of now what.
I love this. I want to add to what you said, because the energy shifted so much, right? We're taking this tough love approach, which is very necessary, but the more an individual gets in alignment with all these things that we've been talking about, the more it comes down to you really asking yourself from an honest and self-nurturing perspective, how much am I going to love this energy that's in me?
This thing.
Yeah. And like, okay, am I going to love it despite all the things that are going wrong in my life and going against me? If I'm really, truly going to love this energy that is allowing me to perceive all the dysfunction in my life, who do I have to be in order to do that? What do I have to do to enable that greater vision of who I have the potential to be, to start working its way through all these dormant centers of energy that are stuck and stagnated and static within and around the energy of our entire being? How much are you willing to love yourself, to put yourself through whatever you need to go through to create a greater connection to what you truly are?
Potent, powerful words that come down to the essence of self-healing, self-nurturing, and self-love. All of those things we must learn to become masters at if we want to be a part of the awakening and the greater journey it offers.
Beautiful.
So you and I have a way of playing off these bigger concepts. You know, in the beginning, it wasn't tough love, but I brought that tough love for a reason. A lot of people need something to hold them accountable to their own bullshit. And I saw a quote back there from Lori. Her bullshit is of her own her spiritual fertilizer. That can be a bad thing, though. If you're constantly using the fertilizer that keeps you in the wrong energy, that's what you're going to grow in. And I know what she actually meant out of what she was saying. The greater thing is, even what we purge and discard is going to influence our greater journey. And unfortunately, a lot of people, because they can't carve out time to give to themselves self-healing and self-nurturing states, what they're purging is this anxiety energy, which is then fertilizing more anxiety states.
Yeah. Well said. I love it. See, like what you and I are doing and what we've been doing, we're finding levels of connecting to what we are and that we can connect together with to give rise to greater possibility of what might be possible. And a lot of people who are stuck in the garden and the trenches of their own doing you keep coming right back to this choice of, okay, everybody and everything is every excuse that I could ever have and hold to keep me from carving out the time to make this. And it's not, none of this is really that hard. It's actually really simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy either. It's just this choice that you're revisiting as much as you need to, because you recognize the value of this. And you know what? People can live in this world. You can get caught up in all the quote unquote trappings and distractions and deception perceptions of this world. And you can keep doing that your entire life, which is what most people have been doing their entire life. But if you look at it objectively and you realize that at some point, this energy that is perceiving all of this is most likely going to leave this body, because a lot of this spiritual stuff, people talk about immortality. We're nowhere near that right now. We have some core fundamentals that have to be addressed as a soul animating physical form that need to be worked out before we can even entertain these higher concepts. But from that perspective, when you realize that more than likely this energy is going to leave your body, you're going to be facing all of this stuff anyway. So how honest are you being with yourself in that, okay, I'm gonna face this eventually. Maybe it's worth taking a few moments or a few hours out of my day every day to give to this instead of my problems, instead of all my past limitations, instead of the conditioning that is really ultimately, in the face of infinity, nothing more than a figment of your own imagination. How worth it is it?
Those figments of imaginations become phantasmal killers at times. And there are those people that are caught into paranoia that's so extreme that that phantasmal killer kills their creativity, their joy, their happiness. And I know everyone in the chat room, even you, have seen those people have reached those high levels of paranoia. And you said a very key word: eventually this energy will leave. But when you practice it, it comes more and more. And the people that are stuck in the paranoid state are in this dragon consuming their own tail frequency, perception, and the deceptions that paranoia creates. So, what do you have for people that are stuck in that paranoid state that is simple words for them to understand?
Say something that you and I discussed before we got on this call, which is this idea of karma to dharma. You know, that I love the way you said that. And it's really it. Like, whether we like it or not, we are all part of a karmic process that has so deeply affected every single bit of who we believe ourselves to be in this world that we live in. And you have so many people believing these beliefs together, creating this frequency that has narrowed the collective of human perception into a very limited container, a very narrow box. And this has been going on for so long, for so many people, that they've just come to accept it as normal. And it's not normal, okay? Or if it is normal, it's about this big of normal compared to what is really normal, which is infinity.
The
Okay, that's
natural
what.
world, the natural world of natural living.
So again, the easy, so karma to dharma, but just look at this objectively. Usually people are caught up in their own paranoia and in these cycles, like, just look at it objectively. Get out of it. You don't think you can do it? I did it. Others are doing it. Find a way to do it. Take a quantum leap. Know that somehow, some way within you is the ability to break out of your own prison, because it's there. It's there.
You just answered this question, but I want you to reframe this question in a tough love answer. Why is self-motivation, why is the self-motivation to do the work so difficult? Question mark. There is so much resistance. You gave an answer, but now give the tough love answer to that question.
So the world has so unremittingly conditioned us to be who we think we are. And we have allowed that process to happen to the degree that we are so heavily invested in it from an energetic standpoint that there is nobody and nothing more responsible for our current state of being than we are. And when we come to the recognition that we are the ones who frickin' put the key into the prison cell doorway and turned it, locked it, and threw it away, We have to be the ones that are going to light a fire under our own ass and say, you know what? I don't care if everybody and everything that there ever was is against my choice to bring myself out of this thing that I allowed myself to be part of because I was just unconsciously tricked into it. Nobody is going to do for you what you need to do for yourself. And you got to connect to the part of yourself that is going to do that no matter what. No matter what, because you know, even if you don't remember, you know that there is a part of you that loves this more than the part of you that is addicted to being stuck in it and suffering as a result of it.
Powerful answer. Even though you said the exact same thing 2 different ways, but that tough love answer just helps people get over the edge of understanding the philosophy and accepting the practical application of it.
Yeah.
All of this philosophy we brought up is here for you to do practical application.
Yeah.
We've been going for an hour and 50 minutes, and we could have easily gone another 2 hours and charged $5,000 for it, but we didn't. Okay? There are so many things that we can have from just these normal conversations that we put out as content for you to perceive, receive, and do something with. So now is the time we like to give homework. What kind of homework would you like to give our audience?
So, in my own journey through all of this, I have discovered that there's an amplification process that takes place when I devote a little bit of my precious attention onto this energetic field that is pulsing through my entire being. Now, what energetic field? Okay, whatever this energy is that's causing your heart to beat, if you take your awareness and you focus on that beating of your heart and you calm your breathing down rhythmically, even in breaths and even inhales and even exhales, while you're aware of and feeling the energy as it's flowing in and out of you. And you start to choose to feel a little bit of joy, a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of love, something elevated. While you're doing this process, you will realize, if you keep doing it, that the potential of that process gets amplified in your own body. And that's all I've done. But I've done it unremittingly. I've done it so consistently. And if that's all that somebody does, but they do it every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes a day, but they do it consistently, they're going to see results. And it's going to be enough to want to encourage them to be better students of their own self-study, of their own evolutionary impulse that is evolving through their own unique blueprint of human expression. So
my part of the homework is to do what he said and then write it down.
Yes.
Write it down so you can engage those different parts of your super consciousness and not just regurgitate what you just heard.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So Seth, we're going to take some callers now. So everyone that is inside the current chat room here in the Zoom room, if you go down to the participants button, or I'm sorry, the 3 dots, and click raise your hand, we're going to have Robert spin up the wheel of callers. We are asking questions about the topic today. This is not about a reading, personal session, etc., etc. If you have a story you'd like to relate about the philosophy also, or what you've just learned about from this different information, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who is going to be presented to us by the universe.
All righty, Cindy Dodge, you're getting a signal to unmute.
Cindy, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, where are you calling from?
Chatham, New York.
Chatham, New York. What did you think about our talk today?
I thought it was awesome. I thought the two of you were just doing wonderfully, collaborating and co-creating your ideas and thought process and experiences. Thank you.
What did you learn today?
It's kind of validating the work I've done as a human being on the planet this lifetime. I also do healing work for others, but I walk that path, and to be able to deep dive even further into the healing world is my responsibility, and I am integrating and processing what I've heard from you both. I mean, your experiences, your lifetime experiences, and where you've been able to take it into dimensions is really powerful. And the words that you put to it is enlivening in me right now. I have been working with biogeometry signatures and tachyon energy. Recently, I've been studying those, and they're teaching me profound ability. Well, maybe ability isn't the right word. A profound relationship with source, and being able to tap into source and being in that still point of absolute love, joy, divinity, source. And, you know, I see it as a figure eight in that energy of sound and light, and maybe something that's faster than sound and light. So I guess I'm wondering, you know, I understand my purpose. I've been very fortunate in my life to be able to live my personal life and my professional life in purpose. And I'm just wondering if there's any advice through the channels of which you both speak.
My first piece of information is you've got the source connection. Now what?
Yes.
Title of Seth's website. Now what is to create the business plan, the 3D matrix. The spirit of business flows through you, and you are the spirit of business in your spiritual world. Write a book, do some videos, take it to the next level. Take your super intelligence of what you learned and create something at the next level with it.
Okay.
That's what the universe is asking you to do. It wouldn't be
Okay.
giving you all of this informational stuff if it didn't think you were ready to do something with it.
Yeah.
Let me say this too. Let me just add to this because it's really key. I think a lot of people in the spiritual arena, right, or the people who are on this path to awakening, they like to cancel out this idea that business and spirituality are two separate things, but they're not. They are the exact same thing. And so we have to come to a level of maturity, I guess you could say, as we recognize, okay, the current systems that exist are what we have to work with. Now, I know everybody would love to create a whole new reality, but in order to create that reality, you've got to work with what you have currently, internally and externally, in order to be able to build new structures that offer new capabilities. So in my life, there was a lot of things that I didn't want to look at or put out or do anything, but I realized that was exactly what I needed to do. And in doing that, it deepened my connection to source, to this energy that we're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. You know, I've had a healing practice for over 40 years now. Yeah. So, and it's taught me much.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I, you know, just witnessing has been a powerful journey.
I had a healing practice for over 10 years until Spirit said, you can't do that no more. You need to up your game.
Yeah. So
part of yours is the same thing.
Okay.
You got to take what you've learned from 40 years and make the handbook of what I learned in 40 years of healing.
Okay.
So that the next generations of healers have your information as a legacy to the future.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to be part of a bridge for sure.
You already are. You just have to determine how many bricks in the bridge you want to be.
I love that. Yeah. Okay.
It's true.
So
It's like
you're-
you're leveling up. You are literally being called to level up. You know, for me, and I continuously revisit, like, am I willing to give up everything that I have and that I think I know to have a greater connection to my purpose? And the answer, if it's not yes, I find a way to make it a yes, because that's what I'm really here to do, no matter what. So it's that level of being willing to surrender everything so that you can be devoted to what you're really here to do.
Okay. All righty. So I will love to tap into, I do love to write. I always thought like I didn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Reinvent it.
Reinvent it. It's your birthright and legacy. Okay, reinvent that wheel. I did 100 times. There is a better wheel, I can tell you. It's with your words.
Yeah.
Okay.
You will grease that wheel with your words and intention.
All right. So the journal is coming out again.
Right.
There you go. Darling, thanks a lot for calling in.
Yeah, thank you. Take care,
right,
both of
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank
All right,
you.
Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who we got next.
Adriana, you're getting a signal to unmute.
Adriana, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, where are you calling from?
New York City.
New York City. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
What did you think about the show today?
It was amazing. It was just what I was looking for. There was a part that really stuck out to me because I feel everything that you guys were talking about. I'm like, I've been there. I've been there in moments in time where I can feel that connection. And I'm starting to really see a lot of it coming to my reality. And it's just really, really beautiful. But there was a part where you were talking about the reflection and how not everything that we see is a reflection of us. And I think that's the part that I'm struggling with at the moment, specifically within my relationship, because I'm not really sure how much of it is a reflection of me. If maybe I'm overthinking it, I'm thinking maybe it's contracts from, before birth. I'm just a little bit stuck in that. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do I separate what I think is a reflection and what is not good for me anymore, so I can level up and move to the next level.
So first thing first is you're overthinking it. And that's your issue right now, overthinking. When we get stuck in an overthinking state, we water the seeds of doubt about our current perceptions. Now, what you were saying before about people forcing a reflection on us, forcing us to accept their teaching that you're my reflection and everything that's wrong with me is reflected in you. That is because your frequency is already so high that people will target you with these projections to lower your energy. And thus the overthinking journey. Who is targeting you with their projection? Let's look at that first.
Specifically, my partner.
Why? Brutal honesty moment.
Why is he? I don't know. I mean, I feel like.
Does he want you to conform culturally?
No, I think the reflection is really more of. I don't know. You're right. I am overthinking it, and I get so stuck in that. I know I don't think it's a conformity. It's more the reflection I'm seeing is more of an unwanted and rejection. I call him my partner. He's the father of my daughter. We've been together since we were like 16 years old. Mm-hmm. But I think I get mixed signals. So like 80% of the time, we're in a really good state, and it's been getting better and better as I've done the inner work. But the other 20% is him just like wanting to run away.
So what if your overthinking state has the 80-20 in reverse?
So
I want you to ponder that for a second. You're giving far too much validation to his point of view in your overthinking and not accepting your part of the perception being force reflected at you. I tongue twisted the words on purpose to make you think.
Yes. Okay.
How
Okay?
powerful is that? But you did say you're touching on, you said the more you're doing this inner work, the better it seems to get. So that should be a cue or a clue to you right there that you're doing something internally that's creating an external effect. So the more you believe in that, the more you trust it, the more you commit to whatever that internal process is, the greater the external expression will become around you. But you got to trust that. You got to really trust that and commit to that in order for that to become a reality, or else you're more than likely going to see your own fears and doubts reflected back to you through some external circumstance.
That makes a lot of sense because it's normally when I am not in a high energy state or connectedness that I see that reflection.
Which is being forced on you. And when anything is a forced teaching, it is a violation of your spiritual boundaries. And the person is doing it in an unknowingness state, which is actually trying to force you to conform to his state of ignorance. That is cultural, forced ignorance. Don't get better because then you believe me, because I'm not getting any better.
Yes. So at what point do you know?
You know already. You just don't want to face it. You've been doing so much out of the choice for the child before choosing you.
Well, and I think that's where my confusion is, because if he wants to not do the work and be around me, then I feel like I've confronted that fear so many times and felt it and found that I will be okay no matter what. But there's still a desire in me to have this family and
cultural conformity. Once again,
yeah.
Cultural conformity. What if you had somebody else to replace him? Would you allow another father in your daughter's life?
No, I don't know. I can't.
See, that's your seed of doubt. That's your seed
Yes.
of doubt you're watering over and over again. Thus why you're overthinking everything. Because you won't allow a new love in your life who can replace the father figure, who might be even a better father than this other guy.
He's actually a really good father.
Doesn't matter. It's still affecting you negatively.
I love it. I love it. What he's saying is so radical, but don't get hung up on what you think it means. Try to connect to the essence of what he's actually saying, because what it's trying to get you to do is get you to be empowered enough to realize that you're not attached to anybody or anything more than you're willing to be committed to this internal process as it unfolds through you.
Yes. Okay. And I think I've dabbled into enough information of that, but now I have to bring it into the everyday life. Like why
aren't you willing to love somebody else? Because that's what I call a spiritual Freudian slip. You are not ready to love someone else, and you still have enough love for him, even though you're in a situation where it's not working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just ask you one last thing in regards to that? There's a lot of really interesting visions I've had of, and specifically lately over like the last month after we have sex, I keep getting the same vision over and over of us outside of this world in some sort of like spaceship. Is that from like a past life? I mean, I know all time is happening at the same time, but is there a reason why I keep seeing these visions? They've come in meditations, but recently it's been specifically after we have sex for like the last month.
And before the last month, how often was it?
Maybe once a year or so.
So the situation with having sex in a spaceship is an astral world entanglement of sexuality. So it's
No,
not, you're
no,
not
we're not
actually,
having sex in a spaceship. It's like after we have sex, we climax everything, right?
no, no,
And all
listen,
of a
listen,
sudden is
listen,
this image.
listen to what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's this image of the spaceship, but it's the sexual energy that's putting you in the projection, making you believe that they're both of you are in a higher state.
Mm.
You're not in
What?
a higher state. The sexuality has created the higher state, which has created a visionary process of something that has escapism behind it. And it's why you can justify what he does or doesn't do so easily. And the vision is coming for you to see it as escapism versus what is in the reality that I'm escaping.
I see now. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's the mirror that's showing you I can accept escapism with him. And that the sexuality right now is what keeping you grounded in this conforming situation in which you're overthinking all the time.
Okay. It makes sense because then I justify it.
Bingo.
Okay.
Self-consuming loop.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I call this the high levels of cultural conformity.
And I feel like I've been trying to escape them my whole life, and here
Right?
I am in it.
You're not alone.
All right, Donald, thanks a lot for calling in.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much it
Okay.
helped.
All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who we got next.
All righty. Let's see, Claire. Actually, Claire's. I'm gonna go with Claire's. I can't do that to you.
Claire, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Florida, South Florida.
Welcome to the show. What did you think
thank
about
you.
the show that we talked about? What do you think about it?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. There's so much validation for me. I mean, I've been doing this work for many years, since I'm about 17, but really seriously, especially since I've started doing your revocations, because we spoke in March, and doing the daily work has really kind of opened up. You have to like kind of stop the Charlie horse and open up a little space for yourself to start healing. And Seth was talking about, the same thing, where you just are constantly doing the daily work, and when you devote more time to it, it just starts opening up more and more for you, and that's where you begin to have more motivation on a daily basis. And so many more things y'all were talking about. It was fantastic.
Did you have any questions you want to give to me or Seth?
There is one thing that he spoke about that I don't know if this would relate to it. About 2 months ago, I had actually had a reading with Laura Eisenhower. We do my chart once a year or so. And we spoke about the Blu-ray beings and the Syrians and things like that. And I began reading about it. And when I was reading about their history, which I wasn't familiar with, about 120 million years ago, or everything, they were kind of where we're at today in our time period. And they did something. I don't know what happened. They destroyed, or maybe they overcreated their technology, but it created I think a situation where they were separated from the divine. That's what I was reading. There was a divine separation somehow. And that kind of like, I was going really well and strong with everything at that point. And it felt like somebody punched a hole, like right in my solar plexus. And it was a very, very deep, I don't know if it was a belief system or, you were talking about something earlier about processing karma and things. If it's part of processing the galactic history that we're here to process through the Syrians and things like that, I don't know. How to separate, I guess, if you're feeling what's going on with the whole of humanity, or if it's something that belongs to you personally, if it's a belief system.
So first thing first, you're in a martyred state.
Okay.
Now, there's a subtleties to the martyred energy of external ancestral karma that is ancient of ancient. And there are those of us who are here to process ancient of ancient karmas, but the vast majority of us are not here to process the ancient karmas, because that's what led us here, is the over-processing of the ancient karmas and the regurgitation of the messages, and then the delusion of the each cultural and each generation diluting the original message until you no longer understood what the original karmas were about. Just from your statement that it puts you into this slow motion mode, meaning some part of you was still martyring to that previous generation of history. And that the inner work on you is to not cut the cords to that martyred energy, because that's what your soul had been doing before over and over again, but accepting the martyr in yourself who had upheld this energy till now, and then going through the greater acceptance process that is me, but I no longer need to martyr to it. It should motivate me, never slow me down or depress me.
Okay.
Seth, I want you to bring your frequency on this ancient karmas and how it affects so many present people and what to do with it.
It's a really fascinating topic. And it's one that I think a lot of people can overthink, as you were saying to the last caller. I never knew anything about processing ancient karmas or collective karmas or anything other than processing my own stuff. So it was through processing my own stuff and getting through it, like literally processing it to the degree where it was getting processed, that I then realized that I started being able to process things on a different level. But that didn't even matter, because the level of processing that I had to take responsibility for naturally on my own first was what was really essential and really important. So we have the ability to get caught up in a lot of ideas and things that, they may be valid, they may be true, there may be something, but they're not more important than the internal work that we are truly being called to do as individuals. That is where the rubber meets the road. That's the first thing we need to focus on. And as long as we're doing that, these greater things have a way of working themselves out, whether or not you're being called to work on them or be a participant in it. That's like a secondary thing that comes later. Right now is, how committed are you to source? Because the more committed to it you become, it has a way of obliterating belief systems that you think are very real, that you think are very valid, only to find out they're not. So the greater your connection to this, the greater it has an ability to just zap that stuff right out.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's
and then get you to the motivated state to do something with the information.
Okay.
And not martyr yourself to its energy alone.
Okay. Because I've been working on it. It's a lot better. And, I sat with it and looked at it, and it was exactly what he was just saying. And you're just saying is part of the whole, but it was also something that just kind of just letting it, like processing yourself, it was going to take care of itself on its own is what I was getting to. Yeah, yes. To keep going in that direction. And okay, very good.
All right,
very good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for calling in. So thanks. Seth, we're nearing the end of the show. Why don't you give people a way for them to get a hold of you, website, etc., all that?
Thank you, Andrew. First, I want to just thank you for having me on. This felt incredible. I feel like we did a lot came through, a lot was created that has the ability to affect everybody at this point in their life going forward. And so I love that we're able to make an impact like that and make a difference in people's lives and inspire them. But, find me. I have a website, I'mAwakeNowWhat.com. You can find me there. Yes, there it is right on the screen. And yeah, there's my other links below. I have a group on Facebook called the Water Consciousness Movement that I'm very active in. I have a podcast that I do with a friend of mine who has taken Emoto's work with water crystals to a level that nobody has taken it to. I mean, she's having full-blown communication with water that people like Rupert Sheldrake and Gerald Pollack, mainstream scientists, are behind her. They're quoting her. So I'm on there. Find me on those links that are listed here and, interact with me. Let's share, let's create, let's work on creating a new potential of reality through our own perception and then influencing as many others in the world that we can. So
Wonderful. So hold on there one second. We're going to bring on Monty Dean. Monty is a standing comedian that comes on our Friday comedy show, and we're going to talk to him for just a second. Robert, going to bring in Monty?
Monty, you're on.
Monty
Yep.
Dean, how you doing today?
I'm all right. My computer's thinking at the moment. I had the
It's processing.
yes, it's processing all its stuff. It's fascinating. You know, because I've got a Mac. It's that beach ball of death when it just sits there and like something was bad.
So, what did you think of the show we had today?
Well, three things, because I've been thinking of I can put a bit together. It was like a recap with new information / perception or perceiving, which is great. It's like I was the Australian is like ooh so it was you know, that whole divine timing thing that you somehow get. The second one is I need a better computer chair because Seth's is awesome. I'm like, oh man, I now want to level up. And the third thing is I feel like I should go on safari. It could be the glasses. It's just like that, or we're coming to the end of August, and 2020 is we've made another level through Jumanji, so it'll be interesting to see what September holds for us. So
Jumanji, the next level.
yeah. So the memes are fast and furious at the moment. So it was I'll probably have to watch it again. I know a couple of people in the chat are going to write it out just to absorb the information. And that's the thing about, as you said earlier, with the writing, even reading a physical book, it engages something slightly different in the brain. And just looking at a screen has a certain effect. And if you're constantly in that one thing, there's other parts of the brain. Yeah, the brain's a muscle on a certain aspect, and you have to work it all out. And so a Kindle's nice because you can walk around with a library. But if you have an actual physical library, you can hold the book, and there's energy actually in that physicality of the book.
Wonderful. So tomorrow we have our comedy show. What do you want to say for people that are going to be watching our comedy show tomorrow?
We're having the dating game come back, but we have a new contestant, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, last Friday I put Monty on the spot with no warning, and he's gotten 2 dates from it.
Yes, May 5th and October 7th. And I'm actually going to meet people as well. Well, it's another 2 weeks of lockdown, but yeah, I'll probably just explain Hellborn and the police state of Victoria, because we live in a free country, apparently.
So I will be on that dating hot seat next time on this coming Friday. So for all of you people who want to know the ins and outs, Monty will, at the halfway mark of the show or somewhere that way, turn on his grilling energy.
Yeah. Andrew is going to be roasted. Finally, the master is on the barbecue.
Yes. So everyone, show up to tomorrow's comedy show, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yep, and we'll be making. And also, this week we had the Republican convention, and so both sides of the false choice has been put forward, so we can make fun of, we can bounce. We could not pick a side, but make fun of both. And then, of course, Andrew will bring in the whole. Yes, well,
we are We are equal opportunity offenders.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'll make fun of you. You make fun of me, and Andrew, we join together and make fun of Robert.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew, really quick, Monty, while you're talking about books, I just wanted to put up really quick the screen for Seth's book.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have anything that you want to say about that also, Seth?
I like the title that was mentioned in the chat. It's a very good title.
And the subtitle too is key, because initiation through the heart is the only way to win. It was like Andrew was saying earlier, we get so caught up in thinking that we got to fight, when the reality is we really don't. We just got to find it within ourselves to surrender. through our heart, to be more lighthearted, to laugh, to have fun, to return to that state of joy and innocence as children, but do it wholeheartedly, committedly, devotionally, and making that important. So that's
And it's the interesting thing that we're going through as well is you pick your own side. And so, like, you know, there's a civil war and lockdown and everything else like that. If you can find that element in yourself where you step back and just watch the theater unfold, comedy is a good way of looking through that lens instead of tragedy. It's like, oh, you're doing that now. Good luck with that.
It's the best. You know, I'd love, Andrew, to hear you, and I'm sure you have in the past, but a lot of people, the idea of a cosmic joke, right? There's so much to that, you know?
Yeah.
And then getting the cosmic punchline centuries later.
Oh man, yes.
It took me 90 lifetimes to get it, but now I get the whole thing has been a joke. Prime Creator got high. Drank a bunch of beer, was vomiting, and then we got this shit.
Well, as I say, as you get into 5D, you're handed a 6D bus pass. If I can put that in a Christian lens, you get to the pearly gates and God goes, gotcha. And I'm like, oh, yes, you know, again.
We're going to expand on that, what that 6D bus pass actually does for you.
Yeah, I know. Because my concept of that is you spend an eon going, what the hell is this?
There's no date, there's no time, but they charged me for it.
Why is there a bus in 6D?
Yes. All right, everyone. We're at the end of the show. Monty, why don't you give people a way to get a hold of you?
I can be found on YouTube at Wafer Thin Entertainment, on Instagram, where I meme way too much, at Monty.Dean, as well on Twitter, which is at Real Monty Dean.
And you know who I am. You can go to my website, andrewbartzis.com. You can look me up on YouTube, Galactic Historian. And we will be back here tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern for the Take the Stick Out of Your Ass serious comedy show. All right, Robert, take us away.
Yeah, the best recording will be that's usually our best